There. And we're on. Okay. Welcome to another edition of AV Rant. I'm Tom Mandry, Associate Editor of Audioholics, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AV Rant, the show where we answer your questions about all things home theater and audio video. I have not changed our tagline yet because we haven't had like a poll or a vote or Tom telling me, hey, this is our new tagline. So we have some fun ones this week for suggestions, but sticking with the old one until I know what I'm supposed to say.
what was the one I liked last week?
You liked because home theater and AV don't have to be difficult.
There you go. It is
Mm-hmm.
though sometimes really stupidly difficult, especially when somebody asks an HDMI question. I'm like, I don't know. Could be
Yes,
anything.
being
Fairy dust.
confused by some of this stuff is entirely fair. So yeah. We're trying to demystify some of it though. That's a fair description of what we're trying to do.
That is true.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have been on the internets this weekend, you will have noticed that we posted stuff over on Facebook and on the webpage. Kind of double posted it because Rob was doing it on Facebook and I was doing it on the webpage. Our list, or like our rundown of all ours. I say it like I had anything to do with it, other than Rob make it so. Rob's list of projectors in descending order of price,
Mm-hmm.
based on things that he would recommend, essentially.
Yep.
We've got Rob W's home theater construction suggestions, who was a listener who just finished his.
It was Alan who did the construction
Alan,
suggestions.
yeah, sorry.
Yeah. Which I think his name was misspelled. One of us is right and one of us is wrong because there are different ways of spelling Alan. I think this was a double Len.
Oh, I put Alan.
I think so.
Find out.
Because we have a listener named Alan who spells it Alan, but that wasn't the Alan who sent us in those tips.
I don't know. Maybe we do only have
Alan, we apologize, but your name is Alan, and if people are just going by the sound of it, they'll still figure out it was you.
Yes, there you go. So Alan, we're just covering our bases there.
Mm-hmm.
That sound you may or may not be hearing is the tremendous thunderstorm that's rolling through my neighborhood right now. In fact, it's so much my neighborhood that when I drove home from the store I was at, it started right as I crossed the little bridge to get into my neighborhood, and I got trapped in my car. I'm like, I'll just wait till it's gonna pass the second. 30 minutes later, I'm like, I guess I'm getting soaked.
Uh-huh.
Has not let up. So,
well, in case we disappear off of the internet broadcast due to lightning, we'll go back and mention that it was Rob W. who did the printed acoustic panels,
yes,
do-it-yourself panels for an insanely affordable price. Like 6 of them for what was it, $225 for 6 panels?
Like maybe $235. I don't remember.
Yeah, and they were printed and they look like great posters, and it's awesome. And I'm so happy that he gave us that info.
I know. I gotta do it. I just gotta find time to do it. I
Yeah.
just don't know when I'm gonna find time to do it. But I am totally doing that. I'm taking down all these black panels. Screw these things. I want movie posters. I want them everywhere. It's gonna be awesome. And then you can change them if you want to. That's the best part.
So long and short of it is, if you haven't been coming to avrant.com in a little while because you're like, it's just the post of the podcast, although you should come to avrant.com because that's where all the links for all the things, every time we say, hey, we'll link to that, that's where it shows up, is on avrant.com. But we've got content for you from last week.
It would show up on the podcast, on the podcast feed for the YouTube channel, because I just copy paste that, but it does. The links don't copy paste into YouTube or descriptions. You have to put the entire link with the HTTP and all that, or it doesn't work. If you just put www.avrant.com, it will not show up as a link. So I am not going through all the trouble of doing that for YouTube. You can go to the website and click from there. So we posted all those things up over the weekend. That was great. The podcast went up in a kind of reasonable time on Friday. So that's exciting. I guess we should talk about our listeners of the week. We got Jim. He went to www.avrant.com and clicked on the buy us a cup of coffee, and he sent us a donation. Thank you very much, Jim.
Thank you, Jim. Much appreciated.
And we had a lot of people, because my wife was almost in tears over the state of our current PC. It is literally we bought a PC when I first started grad school, I think, maybe.
Okay.
About that, so well before children, well before all this stuff, and then it kind of was like barely hanging on, and then I got a review unit in one of my very first review units of the HTPC, and they never asked for it back. I was certainly willing to send it to them. They never asked for it back. I never really used it. It just sat there. You know, because after the review, I was like, it kind of sucks, and I don't like it. I mean, it worked well,
Mm-hmm.
but it was an HTPC, like a really early version of it. So
Was that back in like the Vista days?
yes,
Yeah,
Vista.
probably.
So
Yeah, that
it was a
wasn't.
bit of a mess. And when my computer finally died, I took that thing, I stripped it down, I increased the RAM, and shoved Windows 7 on it. And it's been on computer ever since, which has always been a little weird because it was kind of custom built for HTPC, so it
Hmm.
was a little quirky anyways. And now it's just evil incarnate, and she cries whenever she tries to do anything because it takes forever.
Yeah.
So I got some suggestions from listeners online, and I ended up ordering all this little stuff that I'm gonna put together. It's gonna be like
Oh,
a little
good.
4-inch box thingy with a solid state drive and 8 gigs of RAM. I'm gonna get the wireless module for it and add that in there. I found a tutorial on how to put it all together, and then realized, hey, dummy, it doesn't come with an operating system. I'm like, crap. So now I gotta say, hey, wife, I came in well within the $500 budget, but now we're gonna go over because apparently
Hmm.
Windows costs $120. So
Pretty much.
yeah,
You
nuts.
could do the whole thing of just buying a serial key, like the key code thingy that you have to type in to activate it properly so that you get the Windows updates and don't get the black screen that tells you you're using an unauthorized copy
Yeah.
of Windows. So you could just buy the key and then find the downloadable thing. I mean, that's the way to like turn it into a $60 purchase.
How do you get that?
But
Is that is that legal?
it's a little iffy sometimes.
I am not down with the iffy, to be honest with you.
Okay.
I'm 43 years old. My iffy days are behind me. I
Mhm.
don't iffy anymore. Uh, but yeah. So, anyways, this is the podcast where we will answer your questions about all things home theater and AV. To get your question answered, you need to send a self-addressed stamped envelope full of $100 bills to. No, you don't have to do that. Just send us your questions at, you can email Rob at avrant.com, Tom at avrant.com. Make sure you email both of us. Some people still do not do that. I mostly catch it, but sometimes I don't, and then things get lost. So make sure you email both of us. You can tweet us at First Reflect for Rob, at avrant_Tom for me. Rob's not making a sound, so now I'm thinking I lost him.
Oh,
So,
I'm here.
all right,
I was just checking something. Didn't want my clicky noises interfering.
that's what happened because I was waiting for your uh, pained laughter when I made that $100 bill joke. You can go to facebook.com/avrant podcast where you'll see lots and lots of content that we put up there from our listeners mostly, and every once in a while when we see something that's kind of cool, I will post it up there. Rob does as well. And I guess that's pretty much it. Everything else is sort of immaterial. So just send us your questions, and you'll get in the queue. And if at the end of a podcast, if we haven't mentioned you, and you're like, "Oh, I just sent my question in just a couple hours ago," well, that's why. But at the
Yeah.
end of the next podcast, we don't mention you, or we don't mention that we're going to get to you, then you should probably email us again and say, "Hey, I asked this question, guys, help me out." All right, because we're not ignoring you. We will address your question
Yes.
eventually. So on to that. Tagline suggestions from Joshua. Well, he liked the line that Tom threw out there as a joke last week. If we think you're stupid, you'll find out. I don't know that that's a great tagline. Ask your questions so we can mock you. I don't think we really mock people on this podcast. I think
No. It's once in a while you make a joke because we're trying to entertain as well as educate. Haha, so sappy.
yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, I've been doing this podcast for like almost 8 years, something like that now. Like that. I
Mhm.
just figured out that instead of filming myself in the middle of the couch, I could film myself on the side of the couch and not have to deal with the microphone nearly as much because it was at this weird angle. Like, I am an idiot. I'm okay with admitting that. Sometimes I am super stupid. So yeah, like when I put in the garbage disposal and I just took an I bought like an upgraded version of the one I had that had broken. I bought a
Mhm.
new one, put it in, I was like, oh, it's all the same connections. Da, da, da. I don't have to read the instructions. And then afterwards I went back and looked at the instructions and went, all right, we gotta take it all off because I forgot there's a couple of things I was supposed to do. So yes, not always the brightest bulb. We also have a tagline from. Oh, sorry. Joshua also wanted to recommend the Pocket Casts app for Android. It offers speed control, which is his way of saying that this podcast is too long, and if you speed it up, it goes by faster. Works with Chromecast and lets him listen to AV Rant on headphones while cleaning/working around the house, which makes his wife happy. Happy enough that she agreed to painting the living room with matte gray paint.
Uh-huh.
Wasn't that our suggestion? We suggested that.
Oh yes, we have suggested that. Yeah, we were saying, lots of people. I mean, I'm happy that gray is just in right now as a style choice. So lots of people are fine with painting the room gray. Usually, they're not fine with painting it matte. But there you go. He has a very non-light reflective room that will not be tinging the color of the light in any particular direction. Good for video.
Yeah. My parents painted their new house gray on the outside and gray on the inside, but the inside gray was it's such a light gray that if it's not right, the white.
It's like an off-white.
Yeah, it's like an off-white, kind of skewing towards gray. Anyways, yeah. Paul enjoyed the line from a cartoon posted by West End Electronics on Facebook. The two things that drew me to vinyl were the expense and the inconvenience.
Yes. Jonathan also sent that to us and pointed out that it actually was a New Yorker comic. So that's where that came from originally. Yeah, that sounds about right.
It is about right. I don't really want to go down that path tonight. I'm already tired and generally pissy. My son, last night, we said, hey, let's see your reading log, because he's got to write a reading log every night. He's like, oh, I forgot to do it. I'll go do it real quick. I'm like, no, just let me see it. He goes, no, I'll just go do it real quick. I'm like, give it to me. He was 13 reading logs behind. 13. Like the last week and a half of school. Oh, just want to strangle him sometimes. Anyways. News. Are we going to talk about all this news crap?
We got to hit some of this.
Can you cherry pick this?
I will absolutely cherry pick one of them, which is that there is a service called Vidity. Apparently, this was mentioned way back at CES in January. I had no idea. I never saw a single story about it. But
it was vaporware.
Yeah, pretty much. It was Fox and Warner Brothers and Western Digital at the time. Who banded together and were like, we're going to create a thing where you can download full quality Ultra HD movies with high dynamic range and wider color gamut. And hopefully, they haven't specifically mentioned lossless audio, but I'm hoping they were like, we're going to create a download service so that people who can't stream Ultra HD will still be able to access Ultra HD content via the internet instead of having to buy physical media. And everyone's like, yeah, nice idea. Well, anyway, they have an official website. It's up now. Universal has joined in with Fox and Warner Brothers, which means we're still missing Sony and still missing Disney, which obviously have huge libraries. But this looks...
Disney's not going to happen because they've already got their stupid streaming service thing. So or they just have iTunes because they work hand in hand with Apple a lot. Yeah. So, this has promise, though. I'm hoping that this comes to pass. I'm hoping this lives up to the promise, because I don't really want physical media. What I want is the quality offered by physical media, because streaming just isn't there yet, particularly in the audio, where they're always using loss E codecs instead of lossless codecs. So if this basically works like what Kaleidoscape is doing with their own store for Blu-ray right now, and Kaleidoscape has joined in on this too. I would hope so. Yeah.
Yeah. So we don't know the prices, but it's promising.
The fun part is that the discs will be $25 and the downloads will be $30, because of course they will be, but maybe not. Maybe it won't be that. My kids saw Tomorrowland. They said it was good. I don't think they saw it in high dynamic range, but apparently it was shown in high dynamic range.
There's only a handful of theaters. It was the Dolby Vision cinemas, where Dolby is like, hey, here's everything we know how to do, and we're throwing it all into these theaters. So it's high dynamic range. It's their laser projectors, their version of 3D, which actually gives you 6 primary colors. So the red, green, and blue are offset slightly for each eye, and that's what the glasses filter out. So yeah, interesting stuff. Last bit of news was Fox. Because Fox is like, hey, all our movies from now on, we're making them in high dynamic range. So I'm like, all right, that's cool.
You can see crappy Spider-Man movies in high dynamic range. And every once in a while, there'll be a good X-Men movie. It'll be the one that we decided that we didn't care about and we pulled all the funding from, and they just had to make do, like First Class. But,
Yeah, carrying on with the trend, we've said, oh, hey, all the manufacturers are going to be announcing their entry and mid-level receivers that have HDCP 2.2. Yep, totally happened. Yamaha, they've announced theirs. Denon, they have announced their entry-level one. Interestingly, I think this is going to be a good year if you're looking in the $500 to $1,000 range to maybe avoid Yamaha. because HD Guru did a whole write-up on Yamaha's offerings, and even though they say, hey, we have HDCP 2.2 right now, they don't have support for high dynamic range because they didn't do the HDMI 2.0A ports. They did just regular HDMI 2.0. Yeah.
And now we're going to look like we hate Yamaha for a while.
Nope, don't hate them. And their vintage receivers might be fine. These are the RXV series.
Yeah, they probably will be. I would imagine they would be. So maybe we'll be okay there. Oh, we'll see. Yeah. All right, let's catch up from last week. We got James wanted to share his comments on vintage gear, and these are his words. So imagine somebody else saying this. I joined vintage Facebook clubs and stereophile groups around the country, mostly reading and listening to the group comments. These are my findings. These guys are fanatics. They actually believe the stuff made in the 60s and 70s is better than today's computer-controlled, well-manufactured equipment. It's the tube thing all over again. Number one. This is from him. Yes, you can find great cheap gear at flea markets. Number two. You really have to know what you're looking at and the cost to repair said equipment. Number three, there's a specialty industry out there that will refurbish your equipment for money. Number four, speakers almost always need the surrounds, that's around the drivers, and finishes repaired. Also, again, that's going to cost you money. If there's a mechanical volume control, bass, trebles, or any switches, they most often need cleaning due to oxidation and corrosion. That's more money. Amplifiers are not linear anymore. Capacitors break down. Transistors were never exactly matched. So that's more money. You got to replace all that crap. Most always blemishes or scratches on the outside of the equipment. You just have to live with that. And the speakers are heavy, as are the hi-fi receivers. Now he purchased, I'm going to go back to his words, I purchased two receivers, a Pioneer circa 1977 and a Luxman 1983. Sounds like wine. By the way, but anyway, both had at least 5 out of the 8 issues listed above. Okay, I think they all had heavy. They're probably all heavy.
Probably.
I think they crossed that one off. The Pioneer had a weak left channel about minus 6 dB that he'll need to repair with new components. The Luxman's volume control was very scratchy, and sometimes the channel would drop out without any warning. Bulbs were gone in both units, and I will need some elbow grease to polish the exterior up on each as well. The total spent was about $110.
But that's before the repairs.
Yes, of course. My option, his opinion, I'm sorry, my opinion is to buy a refurbished new unit from your favorite manufacturer. The speakers are better and smaller, and the receivers can do more, louder, and easier. Oh, and I had tons of fun fixing these old girls up. Still, is it worth it? This is his word. This is his final word. Nope. So. Wasn't worth it, but the guys who really believe this stuff really believes. I think I've said this before in the podcast, but there comes a time where people they just go, but that's it. They're like, I was in high school and my brother was older than me, and he was always listening to Journey and Dio and I don't know, Motley Crue and all that stuff, right? And that's the music they like. Everything else, nothing else compares to that music, and can never compare to that music. And that sound that they had back then, those components and all those little switches, when everybody made a little smile on their EQs that no one knew how to use properly, and even if they did, probably didn't do what they were supposed to do anyways. All those people that get those Kenwood units from Sears, and I used to drool over them myself when I was a kid. Every year I would circle that and send it to my parents as part of my "these are the things I want" list. I never got it. And it's fine because I'm not stuck there. But these people get stuck there, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Chasing that sound, you know what? There's a lot worse things to spend your money on than crappy stereo equipment that you have to refurbish yourself. There's a guy down the street from me. He's got a drill press. I think I've talked about him on the podcast too. Drill press. I'm like, that is awesome. I mean, that guy is serious. And I found out that he has a drill press because he makes his own bullets.
Okay.
All right, now I am going to your house, the zombie apocalypse. Do not shoot me. So, but everybody's got to have a hobby, and if this is your hobby, that's fine. But don't try to convince me that your hobby, which is just fine, is necessarily better than the equipment that's out there now. It's just not. It's just quantitatively, measurably not. So, but I'm glad you had fun doing that.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, we were talking about how we ourselves don't own any vintage gear, so there you go. Hearing it from someone who did and saying, yeah, fun, but not worth it in terms of like I didn't get way better quality for way less money or something just because it's old.
Yeah, that's true. It's the same thing when we get people who are like, "Oh, what about these subwoofer kits?" Well, my time is worth I don't know, $60 an hour. And if I'm gonna spend 500 hours on that stupid thing trying to get it to look good, I'm gonna buy SVS and let them pay somebody to do it for a lot less. Dev, which I guess is a name. Is that an abbreviation? We don't know.
I don't know. He calls himself Dev. We'll call him Dev.
You think the rest of it is ill? Devil?
No. No.
Anyways, wants to know the best way possible to listen to movies being played on a laptop using headphones. Most people would say headphones, just plug them in. But I guess that's not going to be good enough. Okay, he's been using a Schlitt audio.
Shit audio. That's their name.
Is that SCHIIT?
It is. You know them.
I know, but I'm not saying that on the podcast.
It's not a swear word. They just made it sound like a swear. All the names of everything they do sound like dirty words. That's their thing.
All right. Anyways, I'm going with Schlitt. Anyways, audio, Magni, Modi amp, and DAC combo. But he says he just doesn't like the idea that his computer is doing all the conversion of the two channels first. I guess this is for movies? Yes, okay, for movies. I got lost. And he's thinking he'd like a way to get the original audio out of his computer and have a separate device turn the True HD or DTS HD master audio into a headphone signal. Will DTS Headphone X accomplish this for him?
We need to walk this back a little bit. That's what we need to
do. This question needs to be unpacked. So okay, so he's watching the movie, and the movie has multi-channels.
Sure.
And he would like, and the computer is taking that and turning it down to 2 channels, and then it is now going into his headphones, and he doesn't like that idea.
Yeah, he thinks the computer is somehow not doing an optimal job of first decoding the audio, whatever it might be, whatever codec it might be in, and then down mixing the 5 or 7 channels into the 2-channel output.
If I'm wrong, don't most DVDs and Blu-rays have a 2-channel option that on the audio? Can't you just select that?
No, that's not really an option on a lot of them.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
I guess okay. Every time I seem to look at one, you got 7-channel DTS, and then you go down and it's like French and German, and then 2-channel. No 2 channels anymore.
Some do, not all.
So that's not so. Okay, let's pretend that they don't. Okay, so. Why does he have a problem with the computer? What does he think is doing it in the DAC? That's my question.
As we've talked about, he might have a noisy headphone output on the laptop itself. So I've got no problem. Yeah. I've got no problem using an outboard DAC, which is you connect that to the USB connection and send the audio out via USB. But it's still going to be 2-channel audio going out via USB. That's all that the Modi from Shit Audio understands. So that's fine. This is a problem more inside of Dev's head than it is a real problem, because you don't need to worry.
I'm sorry, what was that tagline that Rob was thinking about right there? So go ahead. Keep going.
No, you don't need to worry that your computer is the thing down mixing to 2 channels. It's going to have to be down mixed to 2 channels somewhere, because your headphones only have 2 channels. So at some point in the signal chain, that audio is getting down mixed to something your headphones can understand, which is a stereo signal, and your computer can do that just fine. Now, if you're actually watching Blu-rays, like you're taking a physical Blu-ray disc and putting it into the Blu-ray disc drive of your laptop and watching that, and right now you'd probably using Power DVD, because that's like the only program left that you can still buy to play back Blu-rays that has perfectly fine Dolby True HD and DTS HD master audio decoders built into that software. It does a perfectly fine job of that. Your computer does a fine job of taking the 7 or 5 channels and mixing it down to 2. So
but I can't even think of an option that he could. I mean, I guess you could bit stream it out to a receiver and have the receiver do it, and then plug it into that.
Yeah, via HDMI, but it's not. I mean, if it's still ultimately ending up in headphones, it's not going to sound any different.
That's the thing. I mean, I think, yeah. So, do you have a receiver, Dev? Because if you have a receiver and HDMI output on your computer, output it over there, and then plug into the headphone thing there, and then do an A/B. I guess it's not going to be a very fast A/B, but I have a feeling it's not going to make a difference. I mean, it's still a computer. Whether or not it's your computer or it's the chip that's inside the receiver, it's all got to be done in some way. There's no analog way to do this that I can think of. Maybe that's what he wants. You think he wants an analog way to do it?
No, I don't think so because I mean he's taking the digital signal and turning it into analog anyway via his DAC.
Yeah,
So that's yeah, no, this is really I think a concept in his
yeah,
head that
yeah.
he has that we can just try and dispel that for you, Dev. You don't have to worry about it. Your computer is not doing an inferior job of turning it into two channel. The headphone X thing is a different kettle of fish, though. That's yeah, that's something different. I don't know if Tom, if you want to address it first.
No, I don't because I have no idea what it is because I haven't done any research on it.
Okay, so DTS Headphone X, there are two things that Headphone X can do. It can either take an existing recording and basically guess at upmixing it to 11 virtual speakers inside of your headphones. That's one thing Headphone X can do. The other thing it can do is you can have an actual Headphone X soundtrack, which will include metadata, which if you're playing it back with a Headphone X decoder, will say, oh, there's extra data here. It's not just a two-channel headphone signal, stereo signal. There's extra data here to expand to virtual 11 speakers to make it sound like the sound is more outside of your head. So yet again, it doesn't really matter what is first doing the decoding. It doesn't really matter if it gets down mixed to two-channel first. Headphone X is an expansion program.
Yeah, it's exactly the opposite of what he wants.
Yeah, it's not anymore. It's the opposite of being more pure. It's adding on top of what's already there.
I would be highly, highly surprised if I'd liked that. To be honest with you, I would be shocked if I would like that.
I mean, if it's
a possibility.
Yeah, if it's purpose made, like I think the most recent Hunger Games that came out on Blu-ray actually had a dedicated in the menu. You could go through in the audio options and select the DTS Headphone X output where they actually mixed it and did include that metadata. That was in there. Now it's actually being all decoded inside the disc because there are no AV receivers with Headphone X decoders in them yet. It's all being done in software. You can get apps on your smartphone that use Headphone X, but it's all being done inside software. So yeah, it's an expansion program. I mean, ultimately, your headphones have two channels. That's what they have. You can virtualize stuff to try and make them sound like more, but that's all that's going on there, Dev. So at some point, it's being turned into two channels.
I just see that as being something that would not interest me. I think it would just be a little bit too. I mean, I don't know. If it really made it just sound like it was you were in a bigger room without using like some sort of reverb thing, I guess it's possible. I don't want to say I won't like it. I'll say that I am hesitant to say that I think I will. There you go. Anyways,
okay. Sorry, Tom. Before you do that, you can read this question, but I'm having some audio glitch problems. I gotta log off real quick and come right back. So just chat away. I will be right back in a moment. Okay.
Ooh, I gotta say bad things about Rob. All right.
Yep, that's the way it's gonna work.
Here you go.
Bye. Here we go.
All right. So Rob isn't hearing this, but that's all right. Okay, Nick heard Rob's description of using Room EQ Wizard and passive room treatments to first make the decay times across all frequencies more uniform, and then use EQ after that to smooth out the frequency response. He thought that made a lot of sense, as well as Rob's statement that the deep bass will likely always have longer decay times than the mid-range and the treble. The bit about this bass decay times got Nick thinking about the original output from the subwoofers themselves, though. Wouldn't having the fastest possible transient response and lowest possible group delay help to make the deep bass decay times as low and as close to the decay times of the higher frequencies as possible? And if that's the case, then wouldn't sealed subwoofers almost always be preferable over ported subwoofers? In his own room, he has a very large volume of air to pressurize, and Rob's not here to tell me how much because he didn't get down here. But you're back. And
I'm hopefully back.
If his original plan of dual rhythmic FV15 HP subs wouldn't be improved upon by going with dual rhythmic F25 sealed subs instead. Well, basically, Nick, this whole idea. First of all, again, I'm going to stress that I am design agnostic when it comes to anything. I cannot think of a time. There's very few times I will say that something is true of this type of speaker. Electrostatic speakers may be the only time I really say that very consistently, because that is very true. They have a very unique design and very unique sound. But there are two. I mean, one way that people address this whole transient response and getting that driver to stop really quickly is to use that sealed box. Well, The other way to do it is just use a big old amp that has a lot of
Mm-hmm.
power to it. If you think about this, you can either stop a car by making it super heavy, so it's hard to move in the first place. It doesn't really work, from physics, but let's pretend it does. Uh,
No, that's like having a heavy car but putting super strong brakes onto it.
Exactly. So, and
Yeah.
with the large amplifier, you're just putting massive brakes on it, and you could stop anything with massive brakes, which is what the amp will do. The sealed box it does the same thing, but it has its own limitations. So,
Yeah,
I
that's like building the lighter car so
yeah
that the brakes don't have to be as strong
yeah
and it's
yeah
still easier to stop.
yeah. So I just no, I'm not. I'm not feeling that. Uh, I think that you need to be going with your subwoofers based not upon what kind of design they have, because there's this idea that this design is inherently better. There is
Right.
no truth to the inherently better idea. I don't think that ribbon tweeters are inherently better than domes. I mean, I think they have a lot of advantages, but they also have some disadvantages. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that a well-designed dome tweeter, well, it's really kind of hard to beat that, in most speaker designs. Can you? Absolutely. But can you for the same amount of money? I don't. A lot of times the answer to that question is no.
Right. I mean, the thing is specifically with the rhythmic subs, what's often the case is that it's the same driver,
Yeah,
it's the same amp,
yeah,
but they just put one in a ported box and one in a sealed box. So this is basically saying all things being equal, other than it ported versus sealed, the sealed box in that instance should have faster decay times and less group delay because it has this trapped volume of air in behind the driver, which is acting as a spring. When
yeah,
the driver pushes it out, that lowers the air pressure, and the air pressure wants to suck that driver back in. When the driver pushes into the cabinet, then that air gets compressed and it wants to push it back out, and it acts as a damper, it acts as a spring. So, in that case, you're like, okay, yeah, that's the theory. That's how that should go. But it isn't necessarily how it plays out, because you're very rarely pushing these subwoofers right up to their limits of output, and that's when this comes into play. As long as that amplifier is able to rigidly control the movement of that driver, and it can do that as long as you're not pushing it. I mean, when you're seeing the measurements, sometimes people are looking at the measurements of the group delay and they're like, hey, this sealed box, shows less, faster transfer response and less delay. They're pushing it right up to as loud as that thing can possibly go. And that's where they're measuring it.
which is how you do these things. So
That's
then
how you do it. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, it's like the same thing with amplifiers. They're like, oh, this one's a lot more linear. I'm like, yeah, they were pushing enough power to blow your speakers literally up. It's let's apples out. Let's talk about how much you actually need. So no, I mean, in your situation, I don't know this. I don't remember how big the room is. So I mean, does he need to have the ported box? If he doesn't, and the sealed boxes are somehow magically better in his mind, then fine, go with those. I don't care.
Yeah, no, I mean, when output is king, then the ported box is simply going to be a more efficient design. That's what's
Yeah,
going on there. So
yeah,
you can pay a slightly lower price and still get the same amount of output, especially at the resonant frequency of that port, which is the whole idea of putting a hole into the box so that it resonates at a given frequency. Yeah, but you're not just inherently going to have automatically better performance from the sealed boxes. I mean, it's a dual driver design, so you're going to get some phase delay issues automatically from having two sources of sound versus one. So, I mean, even though they should, theoretically be acting as a single piston, but yeah, this isn't one you need to be. Yeah, this is the choice to make.
yeah. Okay. I don't know if that answers his question. So are we
Okay,
saying that
I'm
we should
still
go
having
ported or sealed?
whatever's cheaper in this case, or will physically fit better, because he's basically like the
We don't
sealed
know the volume of his room, is what you're telling me.
yeah, not
Oh,
not exactly, not precisely, yeah.
so then that's what should be determining which one you go with, if all things being equal.
I mean, the whole point with the FV15HP and the F25 is that they're sort of equivalent in terms of output. The F25 has a different roll off on the bottom end than the FV15HP does. The FV15HP goes down as low as it does and then sort of drops off a cliff below that point. The F25 has a more gradual roll off. Depending on the size of your room, that might get you slightly different extension on the bottom end, but more or less they're equal. But the F25 ends up costing more because it's two drivers and a way bigger box, and they have to ship it to you.
Mm-hmm.
So if you just have it in mind that you want that bigger box and you want it sealed and you're thinking, oh, a more gradual roll off is something I want, then okay. But it's not going to be the type of thing where you're instantly going to go, oh, this is way tighter sounding than the FV15 HP, because that just isn't the case. Yeah. Sorry, I'm still having audio issues. I'm going to have to reset. So, Jays, I know you can cover. I'm sorry. I'll be back as soon as I can.
Oh, we'll see. I've never read this question before. This is interesting. It's like having a one-sided conversation with myself, which I guess is like most of my life. All right, here we go. Jay here wanted a quick refresher on the maximum recommended lengths of speaker wire at various gauges. He's been looking to run some in-wall connections of about 30 to 50 feet and just wanted to make sure he's using thick enough speaker wire. He also wanted to know what's so special about Belden. We've mentioned that brand of cables, and Blue Jean Cable themselves, they proudly, I guess in quotes, say they use Belden cable stock, but why is that such a good thing? To start with the Belden thing, the reason that they're bragging, quote unquote, about Belden is that Belden has very tight tolerances on their cables. Therefore, you're getting what you're getting. There is no question there. So yeah, that's why the Belden is good. But now the quick refresher on maximum recommended lengths of speaker wire. There are a number of articles on this. There is, especially on Audioholics, there's, I guess, audioholics.com/audio video cable / speaker cable gauge will get you there, or just search for speaker cable gauge / audioholics. And there's recommended there. But in general, if you're going to go longer than, I don't know, 20, 30 feet, I'm going to suggest no less than a 12 gauge wire. Now, 12 gauge wires and 10 gauge wires, a lot of people like to use 10. 10 gauge wire is just really stupidly hard to work with. It's just so thick that you really have a hard time terminating it. So better sometimes is to use what we call 14/4 wire instead of what would be 10/2. You think about it, 10 is the gauge of the wire, and 2 is the number of wires that are within that thing. So each one's 10 gauge, and there's 2 of them. So 14/4, there's 4 wires at 14 gauge each. Well, when you take 2 gauges that are exactly the same and you twist them together, you subtract 3 from the number. So if it's 14 gauges, you subtract 3 and you've made effectively an 11 gauge wire. Because it's 14, it's 2 14s, it's much more supple and a little bit easier to work with as far as, just getting to move around. Terminating can still be an issue, but I would probably go something like that. Rob's got a link here to a Parts Express thing for underground speaker wire. I don't know why it's underground. I don't really know what he's doing. Maybe he's doing something with underground wire. So with 30 to 50 feet, I would probably be going with at least 14/4. I mean, if you need the wire to be stiff, you can get solid core, but generally speaking, that's like working with Romex, which is awful. So you really want the ones with the multi-strands. That makes it a little bit more supple. And Belden's a good way to go. Parts Express is a good way to go. Monoprice is a good way to go. Blue Jeans is a good way to go. They all work. I usually go with whatever's cheapest, unless I want something that looks nice, in which case then I go with the thing that looks nice. There's that. I think we've lost Rob for good. He's still gone. Oh, well. Moving on. So that was the end of last week's questions. We're now on to this week's questions. This is Sim. Seems to be quite a fan of XTZ speakers. A few weeks ago, when Lee co-hosted, we talked about the 4-pack tweeter design that XTZ uses in their Cinema Series speakers, and how similar and possibly identical it looked to the 4-pack tweeters and the Ken Kestrel speakers. Kreisel? I don't know. Anyways,
Kreisel. I am hopefully back. I don't know what is going on.
It's
Google is
electrical
missing
interference on my side, dude. I'm telling you.
No, it's Google over here. It keeps messing with my microphone levels, and I had solved that issue ages ago, and for some reason it has cropped back up. So I don't know if there's a new Google plugin that's screwing with things, but I'm just gonna have to ride the level on my microphone to try and make it not blast and go into crazy clipping. I am sorry, everyone, for that happening.
All right. Anyway, so Ken Kestrel speakers. Sim says they are in fact identical and made by a company called Clarity. Audio, Claridy Audio. He says they parted ways with Ken Kreisel, though, so XTZ might be the only ones using them now. Sim's real question, though, is in regards to a dedicated theater that's being built for a friend of Sim's in the UK. It will be about 16 by 33 by 8. 16 by 30. Ooh, it's big.
It's pretty big.
It's not quite wide, though. It should be. No, it should be.
It's 16 is a pretty good width for a room.
Yeah. This friend has hired a custom installer, and they have spec'd out a set of Paradigm in-wall speakers, so they cost about $2,500 plus a lone. Okay, you lost me right there. A lone Velodyne subwoofer at a cost of about $2,400. That's a monster Velodyne is what that is. Sim is trying to convince his friend to make some different choices. He would sooner see his friend purchase the XTZ Cinema series speakers, which could be mounted on wall rather than in wall, or just placed on stands, and a pair of SVS subwoofers, or the XTZ sub 3x12, 3x12. I don't know. So it's
it's a 3x12 because it has 3 12-inch drivers all in one box. Yeah,
kind of got that. Anyway, so Sim, right? Or so if so, what can we do to convince his friend? Has his friend ever listened to any of these speakers? Let's just start right there. Listen to the not the subwoofers. Don't worry about that. The speakers. I would not install anything into my theater without having heard them. So yeah, that's the argument right there. The users will just take the custom installer's word for it, because the custom installer, and I've known a lot of them, they're nice people. They are also in business, and that business is to make money, and therefore they will push whatever has the best margins. And the Paradigms are not bad speakers. Let me just start right there. They're not bad speakers. I don't even have to hear them to know that they're probably not bad speakers. I've heard a lot of Paradigm speakers, and I've never walked away and go, that was crap. So these are decent speakers that he's getting, that he's potentially getting. But if he hasn't heard them, he shouldn't be getting them, no matter what speakers they are. And a little AB would never hurt. In this situation, we would always suggest that. Now, he's being suggested in-wall speakers, but there is usually a standalone, within the same line from Paradigm that you could probably get something to say, hey, if that's going to be my in-wall speaker, what can I listen to right now that sounds like it, so I get an idea of what I'm getting. Sounds like he really wants to have like that theater look, or he wouldn't be looking at in-walls at all. Because my first thing would be, let's not do in-walls, please.
Well, I mean, the Sim described his friend as being someone who's like not an audiophile, not really into this stuff, and is just like, hey, I'd like a theater, so I'm going to hire a custom installer to give me a theater. Which, a lot of people do. And I've certainly, it seems to be the trend. I mean, when you go over to CE Pro and, read all the stuff that's targeted at custom installers, it's like in-walls are like the only thing they do. It's so overwhelmingly popular because one of the things is like, oh, you don't have to see the speakers. That's like the big selling thing, right? So it's almost like in-walls are absolutely the first thing that a ton of custom installers go to. I mean, one interesting thing to me is that these particular Paradigms that are being recommended are, if you go look them up on Paradigm's website, you have to go into their archive because they're an older model that Paradigm doesn't even make and sell anymore. I'm like, he has these things on hand. That's what's going on.
Yeah. They're there. He just pulled them out of somebody else's wall. He's going to put them in yours, which is whatever. It's still fine, but
yeah. I mean, I don't have just like Tom. I don't have any problem with the speakers themselves. I mean, they're perfectly decent in-wall speakers. And if this person, this friend of Sim's, really doesn't care that much, it's not like he's getting crap shoveled onto him. That is not the instance here. It's just, I think this is a case of the custom installer going, well, this is what we do. This is what I do. I automatically think in-walls first, and I have these ones already lying around my shop. And so, hey, that's what's going to happen here. And the person's like, okay, and it will sound fine. I mean, unless they A/B compare to something, I mean, even if they did A/B compare to something that you would say, oh, I know that in Sim's opinion, these are better speakers. They're probably not. Yeah, they're probably not even going to care.
Now, the subwoofers, on the other hand, I think is an argument that can be made that's pretty convincing, which is like, I don't care what kind of speakers you have in there. Do you want to have bass that sounds good in every seat, or do you want to have bass that sounds good in one seat?
Yeah, because 16 by 33, I'm betting you got more than one seat.
No, you think? Yeah, I'm thinking at least 2 rows. I mean, 16 by 33, you're gonna have 2 rows, right? The 33 makes it very easy to do that. So you're gonna have 2 rows of seats. You want the people in the back that have bass that they can't hear. The people in the front have bass that's too loud. I mean, that's potentially what could happen. And I got no problem with Velodyne subwoofers. They're
Oh
perfectly
yeah.
fine subwoofer. They're way overpriced most of the time. But my parents had one, and I helped them buy it, and that was my recommendation. So I've got no problems with Velodynes. But for $2,400, you can get a metric ton of bass from a couple of SVSs. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, you could get a
Whatever
couple
else.
of plus models for
Yeah.
around that price, and that will do handle a 16 by 33 room just fine. A couple of plus model subs from SVS.
I'm wondering if they're looking at that Velodyne in-wall subwoofer. I wonder if that's why they're going with it. Because
Mm.
the Velodyne does have the in-wall sub. I wonder if
Hmm.
they want their sub to be in-wall. Because that is really expensive to do those. I looked at those. Those are not cheap. So
Also,
they
the
also,
installation you need to be careful with doing the
yeah,
installation of an in-wall sub because I mean we've been talking about soundproofing quite a bit. People building dedicated theaters. You put a sub in the wall and don't address soundproofing issues. It's like, well, you may as well just take the sub and open the door and point it outside
yeah,
because that's sort of what's going on there. So,
yeah. You definitely get a lot of transmission. Now, the Velodyne sub, if I remember correctly, has everything. It's all encased. It's all enclosed
mm,
itself. So you're not just like putting a subwoofer in a wall or a driver in a wall like an infinite baffle subwoofer would be. I don't know anything about those XTC subs. I'm sure they have three 12-inch drivers. I'm sure they have tons of output. I like I said, the speakers themselves get good reviews. I haven't heard them, so I can't comment on that. But if your friend wants in-wall speakers and he's okay with this price, I've got no problems with that. I do have a problem with only one subwoofer. I think that that's something that should definitely be addressed with the custom installer because it doesn't even take him like it'll take him less time to set up 2 subwoofers than it will to set up one. He'll have to take
yeah,
a lot of time setting up
yeah.
one subwoofer. He's got to try to do the crawl or do whatever, a bunch of EQ. 2 subwoofers, you're like, right there, done, done. Put that corner, put that corner, done.
Although I'm guessing that this particular custom installer might not have all the knowledge about dual subwoofers that we espouse pretty much every week on this podcast. So,
More custom installers listen to this podcast. That's the problem right there. Uh, yeah. So, Sim, are you right that you can get better speakers for less money? Probably. I don't really think it's you being right in any way is convincing to your friend. Uh, but the sub argument I think is a little bit more
yep.
manageable.
Yeah, yeah. If you're gonna, I mean, the thing is, if this person has already hired this custom install and they've already agreed to this plan, coming at them and saying, "Hey, you need to change all the speaker plans," because I mean, this custom installer has already started work on, how they're going to adjust the walls and where they're going to drill the holes and where they're going to run the cables and all that kind of stuff. So I wouldn't put my eggs in the get them to change the in-wall speaker decision basket. I think that's a losing battle and one that isn't necessarily worth fighting in this case
Yeah,
anyway, because this isn't your theater, this is their theater, and they're going to be happy with those speakers. So I wouldn't fight that. But the subwoofer thing should be pretty easy to fight because there's all the reasons in the world to at least get 2 subs. And if you're going to be like, hey, I don't have $4,800 to spend on 2 subs, then
get
pretty
different
easy
ones.
argument.
Get ones that you can't afford, because for $2,400 you could really put a lot of bass in that room. Infinite Gary. Oh, Jesus, is this all one
This
question?
is a big one. It's the Infinite Gary week. Haven't heard from him in a little while. Come back with a vengeance.
Apparently he's got a second wind. He's powering through. Gary has had his theater professionally designed, installed, and calibrated. So maybe he should get with their Sims friend here. But now he has become curious and started to poke around all the settings. That's custom installers love that, by the way. That's one of the favorite things to hear from their clients. Hey, I got curious. I started poking around this. I'll be over. All right, he uses an Anthem Pre-Pro, which uses Anthem Room Correction, which is what we call it ARC, Anthem Room Correction. ARC allows you to store and load multiple equalization curves and setups. It's very common to have one ARC calibration file for movies and a different one for music. In Gary's case, he has 2 calibration files that were set for him by his audio calibrator, one with his Infinite Baffle sub on, mostly for movies, and one with his Infinite Baffle sub off, mostly for music. Right there, Gary. Okay, anyways, now Gary is wondering if this is all correct. And he also wants to know if separate ARC calibration files will be necessary for Dolby Atmos or versus DTS:X. The second part of your question should not be true. You need them, theoretically. But in the past, we found that DTS is always sort of like, well, not always. Dolby would say that they set their bass levels exactly right, and DTS boosts theirs artificially, and DTS would say that Dolby is a poo-poo head and doesn't know bass. I think that's how I think that's how that argument would have gone, honestly, if we could personify those two things. So it could be that there might be different calibrations for each, but in theory there shouldn't actually be.
Yeah, and for the speakers, no, because the speakers are shared positions. The DTS:X. I mean, this is one thing I didn't mention when we were talking about the Onkyo receivers, the mid-level Onkyos that have announced that they're going to have both Atmos and DTS:X in them. What I found amusing was people have been wondering, okay, DTS has been espousing, oh, put your speakers wherever you want. DTS:X will adjust to that. But how does your receiver know where those speakers are? Well, in the case of these Onkyos, it's like, well, it's the Dolby Atmos positions. Those are your only options. It's still multiple choice. You can't just randomly say, I have a speaker this many degrees to the left and this many degrees elevated. No, it's just you have the selection of Dolby Atmos speaker positions, and DTS:X also works with that. So, I mean, moving forward, we can be quite sure that's how this is going to play out. And yeah, so you don't need to adjust the speakers. Like Tom says, there might be something in the bass. There shouldn't be.
It shouldn't be. I'm almost certain there's gonna be, but there shouldn't be, because DTS basically became as popular as it was with the audio files, or movie files at least, because of that 5 dB or whatever 10 dB bass boost that they did in their mixes. That's absolutely true. All right, now just a comment. Wait a second, did we finish that?
Not really, no. Yeah, the whole thing about having the infinite baffle on versus having the infinite baffle off, movies versus music. Linear should be linear. I mean, the whole idea of anthem room correction or any room correction. I mean, in the case of Odyssey, they offer you a selection of 2 curves, but once you select either of those 2 curves, it applies to all content. I mean, you can go back and manually change it to the other curve, but they are different curves. They're not different setups, as in some speakers are turned on or turned off. They're just different. They're options for what target curve is being used. But yeah, in the case like this, I mean, if it's been tuned so that it's linear with the infinite baffle sub on, then when you turn it off, it's not linear anymore. And I guess you can go ahead and use the other subs that Gary has to try and compensate for that.
Well, yeah, I guess with why did they turn them off?
Yeah.
I mean, you can like let's put it this way: if we had 2 Odyssey settings and one of them it was with my subwoofers on and one of them with my subwoofers off, then theoretically I would get linear bass down to maybe about 80, 60 hertz or what a linear sound, and then where all my speakers start to drop off, right? There would be no bass below that because they can't play below that. So if you're why is the subwoofer being turned off? Because you already have other subwoofers. If your infinite baffle subwoofer is being turned off, why is it being turned? What is it contributing that makes it worse for music? Is it the idea of it?
Yeah.
Because literally, if all it's doing is providing the lowest bass, or even if it's providing all the rest of the bass, if it's playing all the rest, 80 hertz on down, why would you turn that off if it can be done linearly?
And let's not forget, you're removing a very obvious source of bass in your room. So what just happened to all the sound wave interaction? I mean, if you've adjusted the room so that with the infinite baffle sub on and then the other 2 subs that are in the room, if you've adjusted that so that you're getting rid of standing waves and you're getting nice linear or at least uniform response at your seats, what just happened by turning off one of those sources?
It makes me completely think changed it. The infinite baffle sub is being used either improperly or it's doing something to the sound that is tolerable from movies, but maybe even
well, I mean, this is similar to the folks who have their subwoofer on for movies and then say, when I go to listen to 2-channel music, I only want full range tower speakers and I don't want any subwoofer at all. So it's going back to that same sort of.
Because if your bass is linear, then
Right.
when the music says don't play anything below this, it doesn't play anything below that. There's no weirdness that's going on.
No, the issue is that it's misbegotten theory. It's misbegotten theory that's
absolutely.
been around for ages, because this whole idea of, this is what's in the signal. The signal said, hey, left front speaker, play a 30 hertz sound. And people go, oh, well, then the correct thing to do is have my left front speaker play a 30 hertz sound, rather than, partitioning that off and using a crossover and having my subwoofer produce that 30 hertz sound instead, because it's supposed to come from the left front speaker. And it's this idea that somehow the bass is directional, or somehow that's the only correct way to play it back is whatever channel it was mixed into. No, they don't mix. They don't bass manage in the original mix, because they're saying, all right, here's the sounds, here's what channel we want them mixed into, and that's the way that they're thinking of it in the mix. Might come up later if we get to it, but in the mixing studios, they very often don't even have subwoofers. Like, that's one of the things that a lot of people don't know. You go into a mixing studio and they very often don't even have subwoofers, or if they do, they're not bass managed. They do throw it into full range channels. It's in the mastering stage that they actually adjust the bass. In the mix, they don't, which is, again, they probably should bass manage. They definitely should have subwoofers, but they often don't, because it's going back to thinking that when we didn't really understand how bass worked in rooms before all the research was done, and they actually figured out, oh, that's what's going on. Well, now we know better. So yeah, that's sort of what's going on there.
Yeah. So overall, Gary, if your subwoofers are all playing nice and doing what they're supposed to be doing, you should never turn one off.
Yeah.
It's just that turning one off makes no real sense.
Yeah, like would you say, I'm just going to turn my tweeters off for this particular content?
Yeah,
like,
because
you'd never do that.
Most of it's in the mid range anyway, so I don't really need my tweeters for this part. All that stuff, the tweeter stuff, that was I would be asking when your custom installer comes over, I say, why did you turn my infinite baffle off? And why aren't I punching you in the face right now for doing that? Because that's how that conversation should go. Next, just a comment, but Gary also says the sustained deep bass in Interstellar has made his new go-to demo disc for his infinite baffle subwoofer, which is sometimes off. So, yes. All right. Anyways, that's cool. I have not seen that yet. I've heard mediocre things about the movie, so I have not run out to rent it. But I think I'd like to see it. I just haven't.
He's not wrong. There's some cacophonous, sustained bass in that movie. So,
okay. So check it out. Last week we mentioned, this is number 3. Last week we mentioned how displays of all types drift away from perfect calibration over time. This LED light source from Runco Q750D projector claims on its product page that it will not drift, but we claim that it would. Who is correct? We are. And that's because we didn't say that. A calibrator told us that.
Yeah.
Because we said what the Runco said was like, oh, the LED shouldn't drift, and the calibrator goes, they shouldn't, but they do. So are you going to believe calibrator guy who's seen it happen, or
and measured it,
who definitely wants you to buy their projector? So since Gary is going to have his projector recalibrated in early June anyway, after he sent it away for repair, he's looking forward to being able to compare the calibration reports himself. Tell us how right our guy is, or tell us that he wasn't right, and you have the world's perfect projector, which will be all right too.
I mean, I could entirely believe that the drift is small enough that to the naked eye you wouldn't notice it, because that is entirely possible. I mean, for your eye to actually notice that the color has shifted, I mean, it's happening so gradually over sometimes such a long period of time that it's like, it's certainly not the end of the world. It's just that if you are looking for the perfect calibration, completely accurate color, and you're working in a color correction studio or something like that, then it's like, no, it does drift. But yeah, I would entirely believe not a noticeable amount to the naked eye.
Yeah, I would not be surprised at that either. But to say that something doesn't drift, you just set yourself up for somebody to say, yeah, it did. Look at by 0.0001.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Right? Anyways, Gary,
now
this is 4. All right, so we're at 4. Yeah, Gary has a Denon Universal Blu-ray disc player, and it has a plethora of confusing setting options. Don't touch those buttons, Gary. Now that Gary is playing, it's too late. Now that Gary is playing with all these settings, he wants to know what they should all be. You probably should just leave them alone. They would have been fine. I guess apparently we're going to be linking up stuff. But he's got a Denon DVD A1UDCI, which is, I think that thing was like a ridiculous, what, $3,000 or something?
It's like, yeah, it's $3,000. And yeah, I mean, that's the one where you look at the Oppo BDP 105, which is what, $1,200, and you go, oh, that's actually a good deal, because the 105 can do everything that this one does, and actually a bit more, because the Oppo 105 also has a great video processor inside it that you can link other things into. It has an HDMI input.
That HDMI pass-through input thingy was pretty awesome. And Anthem D2V3D, whatever the heck that is.
That's their pre-pro.
All right, pre-pro. All right. Firstly, he noticed that his Anthem's front display was showing 7.1 PCM as the audio input, not DTS HD Master Audio. What's the deal there? Well, your Denon is sending it out the way it's supposed to. It has decoded it and is sending it out via PCM so that your pre-pro is just playing it.
Yeah. So here's the thing with a player like this. This is a player that is built for, I mean, this is a kitchen sink player. It's got every conceivable way of setting up a Blu-ray player, both for the video and the audio. And that makes it a bit of a mess. It makes it a user nightmare. The manual is by no means a user-friendly, easy-to-understand manual. And the way they have set up how you adjust some of these things is not user-friendly at all. I read through the manual, and there's sort of a couple ways to think of this. The original conceit of Blu-ray, when they were first coming up with the format, they were saying one of the things they wanted to be able to do was have like two sources of audio playing on the disc at the same time, the main movie and then a picture-in-picture window with a director's commentary or something like that, and actually have two separate sources of audio on the disc playing simultaneously. The only way that was going to work is if all the audio was being decoded inside of the Blu-ray player and then being sent out as PCM audio. That's the way they originally envisioned it. The original spec for HDMI, that's what it handled. And then people were like, but how do I know if...
say DTS on the screen.
That's right. How do I know if I'm actually getting master audio? And you know what? People were right to wonder that, because there are some stupid Blu-ray players where if you look really carefully in their manual, it will say like, oh, when you put out PCM audio, you're getting PCM audio, but it's actually only decoding the lossy DTS core that resides inside of DTS HD Master Audio. That's all we're actually decoding. You're hearing sound, you're not hearing the full quality sound. So people got paranoid, and somewhat rightfully so. And they said, look, just send out the original audio so that on the front of my AV receiver or processor, it will say DTS HD Master Audio. And then I know I'm getting the original audio off the disc. And now it's up to my receiver or processor to do the decoding, just like what we used to do with regular Dolby Digital and DTS. So Gary's sort of wondering, and he's right to wonder, because again, kitchen sink, this thing can down mix, it can re-encode, it can do, this is coming up in a bit, but it can do all the speaker settings and bass management inside the Blu-ray player, which means you could just connect it directly to an amplifier if you wanted to, and not even have a receiver or a pre-pro in between. If it's acting as your only source in your system, you could connect it straight to an amplifier. So it has all these settings. In Gary's case, I really think the easiest thing to do is, first of all, in his remote, there's a button that says HDMI mode, because this thing has two HDMI outputs.
Yeah.
And for the love of God, Gary, just click that HDMI mode button on the actual physical remote until, I don't know if he's only has one cable coming out of this thing. He has an HDMI cable using one port. That's all that's connected to anything else. It shouldn't be this complicated, but it's either going to be HDMI 1 or HDMI 2. Just hit the mode button until HDMI 1 or HDMI 2, whichever one it is that you're using, shows up on your Denon Blu-ray player, because all the other things are like, oh, if you have these two connections, one of them can be video only and the other one audio only. That's one way to set it up. Or you can do, they're both putting out both audio and video, but it will down sample it to the least supported format, or you can have them independent, or you can set it manual. It's like, oh my God. Yeah. Like it's so confusing. It's ridiculous. And they put it in there because there are some people who are like, well, this is how I want to set it up. And they're like, all right, we'll make that an option. So just use that mode button. And then you're going to hit setup. You're going to go to HDMI settings, and you're going to put everything on auto. Everything on auto. I know, but it says right in the manual, that's where it will output the full bit stream. It won't touch the audio. It won't do a darn thing to it. It just takes it off the disc and shoots it out the player. And that's good. That's what you want because your Anthem can handle everything else. Almost all of his questions coming up, that's it. You don't have to worry about them anymore. You put it on auto, the bit stream is going to come out. DTS HD Master Audio or Dolby True HD is what's going to show up on the front of your Anthem, depending on what's on the disc, and you're done.
The only problem you may run into is special features. Occasionally, the audio will.
Yeah. Nobody used that. Like nobody used that.
I have had when I used to use my PS3 all the time. I haven't had this crop up because Redbox doesn't have special features on the disc, so I haven't had this crop up too much. But it's occasionally there'll be you have to go to PCM because of the special features or whatever, but not always.
Yeah, there was one last setting, which was the HDMI audio out. You have to make sure that you select HD audio, not down sample or down mix or re-encode. It was re-encode, I think, was the other option. You want to make sure it's HD audio, and that way it won't re-encode it down to just standard Dolby Digital or standard DTS. Too many options.
Yes.
Way too many.
Next, his Denon Blu-ray player has a full set of speaker setup options, speaker size, distance levels, crossover frequency. What is confusing to Gary is that the Anthem manual talks about what settings to choose in the Blu-ray player, or if it offers these setup options. The Anthem manual says to set all of the speakers to large and set all their distances to the same distance in the Blu-ray player. But then we were always saying, to set speakers to small and measure the distances, the tape measure. What's going on, dude? Okay. Your receiver is going to do that.
Yes.
Your pre-pro does that. You do not want it to be done twice because it's already being done at your receiver. So if you do it again at the Blu-ray player, what you want is the full range to be sent for the left channel, the right channel, the center channel, the surrounds, all the surround channels, all full range. And when it gets there, your receiver will say, okay, anything that's 80 hertz, or I think in his case like 60, 65 hertz or lower, send that to the subs. Except when this Infinite Baffle's not on anymore. Send that to the subs, okay? And everything else, this is how we're going to adjust it based on the distances. If you've already done that, it's going to redo it again and change everything up. You don't want to do that. You don't want to do that.
We call that cascading filters, where you've already filtered. Yeah, if you already filtered the bass inside the Blu-ray player and then you filtered it again once it got to your Anthem Pre-Pro, then we don't want that. You filtered it twice. We don't want to filter it twice. We only want to filter it once. So that's why, I can see being confused by this, because the Anthem is saying, if these are options in your Blu-ray player, this is how we recommend you set it up. And he's like, oh, I do have these options inside my Blu-ray player. I guess I should do what Anthem tells me to do in their manual. But unfortunately, no, because all you want your Blu-ray player to do is take the audio off the disc and shoot it out unadulterated. Well, that's all you really want it to do.
That's basically what they're doing, though. You could pick any distance as long as they're the same all the way around. You can pick, as long as everything's set to large, you're getting full range, and it's not changing the volume of any one based on some weird distance setting.
Yeah.
So,
but all of it is moot if you're sending out the bit streams, because the bit streams, nothing has been done to them. Nothing's been touched. It has no idea about your speaker setup. All is just coming straight off the disc and shooting out the player and not being touched at all. So all of that is moot.
Yeah. He also has his Blu-ray player also has a D-mix light that always seems to be on. That's problematic, I would think. The manual says it stands for down mix. Should that light be on? What's going on? I imagine fixing that, everything else was going to make this light go away, but maybe not.
No, because I had a heck of a time figuring out what the heck is going on here. I read through the manual. It gives a description. It says this D-mix light that shows up on the front of his Blu-ray player means that down mixing is permitted. Not that it's happening, that it's permitted, which is the dumbest, most confusing light you could put on something. But you know why it's there? I'll tell you why it's there. There are 3 potential reasons why it's there, because this Denon Blu-ray player has stereo balanced XLR outputs. For the people who are like, I want balanced XLR outputs for everything. So there are 3 scenarios, 3 types of content that you might be playing where what is coming into, or what is being played inside the Blu-ray player, cannot be downmixed to those stereo balanced XLR outputs. That would be a signal that's already stereo, can't be downmixed because it's already there. So that demix light turns off. And Gary was like, I played stereo and the demix light turned off. I'm like, yup.
Okay.
Multi-channel super audio CDs.
Yep.
Because multi-channel super audio CDs contain a 5.1 dedicated track and a 2-channel dedicated track. And the 5.1 dedicated track cannot be downmixed to 2-channel by the player. You have to select the 2-channel track that's on the disc. All of them have it, but you can't play the 5.1 channel track on the super audio CD in 2-channel. That demix light will not turn on if you selected that. The other one is multi-channel FLAC. Multi-channel FLAC cannot be downmixed to 2-channel.
Random, but okay.
Yep. Well, those are the 3 scenarios. So the stupid thing about this is that light is basically always going to be on because you're playing 7.1 Dolby True HD. It can be downmixed. The light is on. Doesn't mean
a little bit of electrical tape, or just look at it.
It doesn't mean it is being downmixed. It means it can be downmixed. What a stupid light.
It is a stupid light. All right. He also saw a dialogue normalization offset +4 flash briefly on his Anthem's front panel when he started the Blu-ray. What the heck is that?
That is a feature that pretty much only exists with Dolby. So it must have been a Dolby True HD disc or a Dolby Digital. Dolby puts a thing in which allows the masterers to say, here's where we want the dialogue level to be. Our mixers made it this way, but we, the masterers, want it this way. But we don't want to completely fiddle with everything, so we're just going to use dialogue normalization. It's a Dolby thing. It shows up. Some things give you an option to turn it off, which given the plethora of options inside this den, and there probably is some option buried somewhere in a menu to let you turn off dialogue normalization. Don't touch it. Don't worry about it. Don't touch it. It's what the masters wanted you to hear. I think Tom has frozen on my screen, so I'm not sure if he's still talking while I am talking. This has been a technical nightmare as far as this podcast goes. So I'll just keep going in case people are able to hear me, but not able to hear Tom. This is the last of Gary's questions. He still isn't convinced about setting the crossover for his speakers to 80 hertz. Like we're always suggesting, his speakers on their own claim on their product page that they're able to play down to 28 hertz. And his audio calibrator, he set all of those speakers crossovers to 60 and 65 hertz, give or take, depending on the speaker. And so he thinks it's always sounded pretty smooth and well integrated in his room. But one thing to know about Gary's room is that he essentially has one seat. It's a large seat, but it's basically just one seat. And so, given all that, he's like, what's going on here? He's noticed that there are basically no options for large or small speakers. And inside the Anthem, there's just advanced, which lets you set individual crossover frequencies for each pair of speakers individually. So he's like, okay, what should this actually be? So in a case like Gary's, where he's really pretty much only looking at one seat, what the calibrator did there might be fine. Because if you're playing a sweep and you're saying, hey, these speakers here are in this location, able to maintain linear response down to this frequency, it's fine to cross them over there. Where 80 hertz is a starting point. We've had people describe, they set it to 75 and it got rid of a tiny little, distortion that they were measuring with a measurement microphone, or they set it higher than 80 hertz and that got rid of a problem. 80 hertz is sort of your basic starting point. 65 or 60 hertz, there's nothing particularly suspect about that, particularly when it's one primary seating location. Gary doesn't have some wide seating location or multiple rows, but more or less what happens, the way that I recommend coming at it is sort out your bass first. Don't even worry about your speakers yet. Just sort out your bass first so that you're getting linear response across all of your seats, using multiple subwoofers and positioning them the way we always talk about. Once you've done that, and once you've set up your subwoofer so that you're getting linear response, all of a sudden you have freedom now. Now you have the freedom to set the crossover for your speakers wherever you'd like, because you know that wherever the subwoofers are taking over, they're going to produce uniform bass. So that actually lets you set the crossover higher than you might think. And still maintain uniform bass across all of your seats. That's the wonderful freedom of using multiple subs and having them in the positions that we always talk about. So one thing that Gary was kind of asking about is, hey, my speakers say that they're capable of playing all the way down here? Aren't I kind of wasting that capability by setting the crossover to something higher than where they can play? And that's where we have to say no, because what you're hearing is a combination of what the speakers are producing plus what the room is doing to that sound once it leaves the front of the speaker. So you don't have to think of it in terms of this is just what the speaker can produce on its own and don't I want to use everything it can do. That's a little bit like saying, oh, my projector can produce colors that are completely inaccurate. Don't I want to use that all the time just because it can do it? And no, you don't want to use it. You want a calibrated and correct image. So Tom, I have no idea how much you talked. I talked the entire way through.
So
this is going to be
one word. So
this is going to be very fun for you to edit.
That's all right. I've got this. Don't worry.
That's perfect timing. I've finished up with Gary. I'm sure you trust that I gave wonderful answers, and we can move on to Buddy.
Yes, I'm sure he's fine. All right. Gary's probably already got his answers from you anyways. Buddy has been driving himself a little, and not just him, a little crazy trying to put together his 2-channel system based around ESS AMT1B speakers using a Heil air motion transformer tweeter. First of all,
that's a folded ribbon. That's what that is. Folded ribbon.
See, you're trying to build a system around a couple of speakers he doesn't have. That's the problem number one. First of all, he's having a bit of a trouble tracking down the particular speakers for purchase, but he seems to have his mind pretty much set on them. That said, there are some potential alternatives he might like. I guess, why are we recommending these?
I'm recommending them because these use folded ribbon tweeters, and that seems to be the standout characteristic of those particular ESS speakers that he really likes. In the case of...
volume is all over the place.
I know it is. That's what I've been trying to adjust. It's blame Google, man.
Until just now, but it's like you keep getting closer away from the mic.
I know. It's annoying. I thought I had fixed that before. Yeah. Emotiva and Legacy Audio, they both actually use Heil air motion transformers. That's the tweeters they're using there. So, certainly the Legacy Audio products are available in stores if you can find a dealer in your area. I think you'll be impressed. They make darn nice speakers. Yeah. But Emotiva's, they're self-powered, their stealth and their air motive studio monitor speakers.
Yeah. But right now his question is about amplification. He was given advice by a salesperson that only expensive $3,500 plus amps with no negative feedback would be clean enough to deliver the best sound quality from the ESS AMT1B speakers, but he was more interested in the Crown amplifier. Talk about two ends of a spectrum there. Crown is, mostly professional
and Class D for the most part.
Yeah, and fans stuff. But now he doesn't know what to do. Well, I don't know that I would go with a Crown. I got no problems with Crowns. I've actually looked into them myself, but before I worked for Audioholics. But yeah, I don't know that you need $3,500 worth of amplification for. Aren't these basically bookshelf speakers?
Well, there are two models. He's still never mentioned exactly whether he's going for the bookshelf or the tower model. Oh, if he can find them, he'll probably take either.
Yeah, I guess so. That's probably why he didn't mention it. But yeah, the no negative feedback. I think that has to do with. Oh man, I did some research on this, and I'm being distracted by myself. Anyways, go ahead, Rob.
It's pretty much a load of tosh is what that is. There has to be feedback of some sort in an amplifier. Otherwise, it will never adjust itself. It has to look at what is the signal I sent out versus what is the back wave coming back. And if those things are massively far apart from one another, you've got a big problem. You can send your amplifier into oscillation if there's a problem like that. That's partly to do with the damping factor. But, there are different forms of feedback. You can use a servo. You could use current feedback. You could use voltage feedback. There are many different kinds of feedback, but there has to be feedback of some kind. So saying
just said nice things.
Yeah.
Not negative things.
This is like a salesperson who essentially doesn't know what they're talking about, and they're
just using the terminology they've been taught in order to sell stuff. There's nothing necessarily wrong with that. It's just
bull.
Genuine. So how do you think car salesmen, and I know car salesmen, and they're very nice people, but a lot of times it's, hey, you need that undercoating to protect you from the snakes. It's just stuff that's being said, and you need to be educated enough to go, I don't think so, dude. What you're worried about here, honestly, this whole clean nonsense. What you're worried about is noise floor. That's really what you're worried about. If you don't have a noise floor, or you not a discernible noise floor, I don't see any reason why any particular amp's going to be any better than another, unless you're trying to drive them to really loud levels in very large spaces, which I doubt Buddy is going to be doing. So yeah, I'm not saying that Crown is necessarily a good or a bad choice, because I have no idea which Crown amplifier you're going with.
This is pretty much all happening because Buddy has mentioned that he has a friend who has these ESS speakers and he's using Crown amplifiers, and Buddy's like, ooh, I like the way that sounds, and he basically wants to replicate it, but he keeps being thrown off track by getting different advice from different places.
Just get what the guy's got. Why do you have to, if you already like it, get what the guy's got. Don't listen to anything anybody else says, including us. If you like it, no, seriously. Yeah. Don't ask us questions about something like, well, I like this one thing, but what if I get that? Why would you get that if you already know what you like? Well, this guy said no negative feedback. I'm giving him negative feedback. I'm gonna give you negative feedback, buddy. Buy what you like, and don't worry about what everybody else says about it. It doesn't make any difference whether or not I think Crown amps are a good idea. If you've heard them with those particular speakers and a setup that's gonna be similar to what you're gonna be having, go for it, buddy. Knock yourself out. You're going to be absolutely thrilled. And no amount of spending an extra probably $3,000 on amplifiers is going to in any way increase your enjoyment of these speakers. I refuse to believe that you can spend an extra $3,000, because a Crown amp's $500. I bet that's about it, right? Maybe $1,000.
Depends on what model. Yeah.
Spending an extra, $2,500. $3,000 on amplifiers, you're not going to go away and go, oh, that was totally worth it. You're going to be mad at somebody, and it won't be me, because I told you not to do that. You get what you heard that you liked, and just go with that.
No, I think we've confused the issue because it's been a combination of some of the wording that Buddy has used to ask the questions, because a lot of times he's asked, like, will this be better? Is this the best choice? And things like that. And when I hear something like that, I give my honest answer, which is like, well, not necessarily. And here's the way I would come at it. But the thing is, if you have heard it and it's what you want and it's what you like, then go for it.
Everything else is absolutely immaterial.
It really is, yeah. Because I still might say, maybe I don't think that's the most efficient way. Maybe I would have done it differently. All of that stuff can still be true. Completely immaterial if you have the experience that you want to have. Because there's none of the things that he's ever asked about would I say, oh, that's a horrible choice. Yeah. He's asked, would you do something different? What would you recommend? Is there something that's better? Is what I'm choosing the very, very best possible? Those types of wordings, right? So,
now that we know that you've already heard it and liked it,
right?
We have nothing to say other than buy it.
Yeah.
You go find it and buy it. And if you can't find it and buy it because of whatever reason, then, well, we can help you find something similar,
right?
Hopefully, and we're going to put links in the podcast notes of the speakers that Rob has researched for you. But honestly, you should just hold out for what you know you like, because anything else, you're going to be like, oh, I just wish I had gotten that.
Exactly. Yeah. When you get to a point where you already have something in mind, where you're like, that is what I want, yeah, the psychological aspect of that alone, because you'll always have it in the back of your mind. Like, even if you get something that sounds awesome, you'll be like, it doesn't sound exactly like what I wanted.
Exactly. Like, well, electrostatic speaker sounds like it's going through my head, and it's like, but it's not like that other thing with the Crown amp. So yeah, definitely get what you want. If you have already heard it, then get it. If you've test driven the car and you fell in love with it, I am not going to try to sell you a different car.
Yeah,
for less money.
Yeah. But if you asked, is this the best deal for this amount of horsepower, then I still might give you the honest answer. Be like, no, there's this other one that's cheaper.
Is this a good car? That's all right. I wouldn't buy it, but you can buy it too. That doesn't make a difference. That's not what you want to hear. What you want to hear is for us to say exactly what we just said, and we've said it.
Yeah.
So on your way, sir. Jim was all set to purchase the Wavecrest Audio HVL1 bookshelf speakers. These are designed by Ascend Acoustics for $200 a pair, but then he saw a YouTube video review that compared them to the Chain Audio A1 little R little X little C bookshelf speakers. Why little R little X little C?
I don't know. That's what it is.
At $300 a pair, so 50% more, which uses a planar magnetic tweeter and have some just
glowing. I'm sorry, that's a big typo.
Yeah, that's one very important word. Letter in that word.
The G is directly above the B on the keyboard. That's what happened there.
Like, wow, let me see some of these blowing reviews around the web. Jim wants crisp, clear, high frequency output, loud output capabilities, and strong bass down to at least 80, where he will cross the speakers over to a subwoofer, and he would like the price to be under $300 a pair. Well, you mean under $300 a pair, or $300 or less? Because the one speakers you're looking at are $300 a pair, so they're out.
$299 is under $300.
So what we recommend? Have we heard these Chain speakers?
Nope.
Have not. Sorry. I'm sure they're... I don't know. I'm not sure of anything. They're probably not. They could be great. You got 50-50 shot, really, to be honest with you. $300 could be anything. Really anything.
I poked around some of these reviews and I watched some of the YouTube things, and they have a common theme, which is that everyone comments on how much the highs sing out, and they're surprised by how much bass they have, which makes me think the speakers have a smiley face curve. I kind of suspect that to be true. I saw one review. I don't know if it's the same review that Jim saw, because he didn't send the link to the particular one that he watched. But I saw one that I believe, because this person actually took some measurements of the speakers, and they're like, the Wavecrest Audio HVL1 speakers measured the most linear. They were comparing 3 different speakers. It was these 2 and a set of tannoys. And he's like, the Wavecrest ones measured the most linear, but these Chain ones sounded more sparkly in the highs and had more bass. And I'm like, I believe that. I don't doubt that for 1 second, because it goes in line with what everybody else is saying. And I'm like, that's a very common design choice.
When you have very little to spend on making a speaker, so if it's $300 speaker a pair, you're looking like $50 in parts if you're lucky, maybe $25 to $30 parts. I mean, it's really that low, because you got to factor in R&D and marketing and maybe even the box. Maybe that wouldn't even be considered the box, and then assembly and everything else. I mean, yeah, there is just not a lot of money there, so they've got to make something that wows, and most of the time what wows is bass and treble. The mid-range, not so much. Nobody ever goes, wow, the mid-range of that was just smooth. They never say that at $300 a pair. So yeah, it makes me think that if those are the reviews as Rob is reporting here, that's exactly what we hear. And in fact, as a reviewer, I used to write that as code for people who knew what they were talking about. I'd be like, wow, the highs are really high and the bass is really good. Crickets. And if you're into that, you're going to love these speakers.
Right.
If you're into that, you do not know what I'm saying. You do not understand the code. The code is, for $300 a pair, yeah, they're pretty impressive. Yeah. But, they're not linear. And if they're not linear, they're eventually going to bug you.
Yeah, there's one other thing that again, this phrase of these sounded remarkably loud using little power and things like that, or they used a lot of power and they played very loud. Loud is an interesting description of a speaker, because loud means distorted. That's what it means. Because a speaker that does not distort, it gets louder. Technically it's putting out a higher sound pressure level. But when it's playing with almost no distortion, it doesn't sound louder. It sounds like it got closer to you. Yeah. That's a remarkable thing when you experience it, perhaps for the first time. But you're turning up the volume and you're like, these speakers don't seem to be getting any louder. It's just like everything is moving closer to me. How are they doing that? So
kind of like your voice is doing right now.
I know, it's freaking Google. There's nothing I can do about it right now. When a speaker is sounding loud, it means it's starting to distort.
Yeah. And
that's
you always know that too when you're like, "Ooh, wow, that's getting loud," and your eye will start to close. Like one eye will close. You're like, "Wow, that's awfully loud. Wow, that's loud. Oh, now both eyes are closed. Okay, okay, I'm covering my ears now. It's very loud. It's
Mhm.
distortion. I mean, yeah, it can be just it being very, very loud, but chances are it's distortion. So yeah, crisp, clear, high frequency, loud output capabilities, and strong bass down to at least 80 hertz. I think, Jim, you need to rethink the things that you want. What you want is linearity and the
Maybe
ability.
not though,
Well, I
because I
think.
mean, he might hear it and go, "Ooh, I like that." It's very possible.
Well, I'm not saying that he doesn't want those things. I'm saying that he also wants a linear mid range between the two.
Hmm.
You know, because if you do not want that, then you're like, you know, what you've heard in the past that you've liked, it's easy to like that over the short term. It's very
Hmm.
easy to hear a boom sizzle speaker and go, "Wow, that sounds really impressive." And then after 2 hours of a movie, you're like, "Wow, I could really use an aspirin right now because my head's killing me because of all the sizzle and a little
Yeah,
bit of the boom."
he was asking for a suggestion, and I would my first thought when he was saying this was Ascend Acoustics already designed those Wavecrest speakers, but it was like the cheapest speaker they could design. That's basically
Right.
what it was. And they, I mean, it is kind of remarkable because as was pointed out, they measure very linearly, but they don't necessarily play terribly loud because I mean it's just a limitation. The magnets can only be so big inside of something that costs that little. I would look at Ascend's own CBM 170 SE speakers, and even though they normally retail for more than $300 a pair, they have B stock. They
Right.
have B stock for $300 a pair. That's what I would do here because I have to tell you that SE series tweeter is a way more expensive tweeter than the one that's in the Wavecrest, and it's impressive. And if you want clarity, not necessarily sizzle, but clarity at that price point, I've always maintained that that's one of my favorite tweeters that's out there. So that's where I'd point you first and foremost.
All right. I see that you have a Dolly one on the list here too.
Yeah, that's actually coming from the Wirecutter. Yeah, Chris Heinen over at the Wirecutter just did a gigantic bookshelf speaker roundup. Like I forget how many. He had a huge number of bookshelf speakers, lower price range ones that they were comparing. They haven't posted that entire article yet, but they already let slip that these DALI Zensor One speakers are the ones they're going to pick as their top choice. But I think they're actually a little more than $300 a pair.
Yeah, but they have a no, they don't. I thought they had a ribbon tweeter, but they don't.
Nope.
I'm a pretty big fan of Dolly. My impression of Dolly is even the speakers from Dolly I didn't like, I still kind of liked. You know, I didn't. There was things about them that weren't linear, or things about them that weren't great, but they weren't necessarily bad speakers. Okay, is that good for him? Yeah, we're
Yep.
good for him. There's a couple of speakers we'll probably throw in that mix.
Mhm.
Toby wants to know if we would comment on Gene and Hugo's YouTube video where they respond to ABS forums comments regarding Audioholics coverage of Dolby Atmos and DTS:X. I watched this a while ago.
Yeah.
I have always maintained that worrying about the first thing I did when I started working for Audioholics was I stopped reading ABS. That was, I mean, I used to actually frequent the Axiom forum quite a bit. I got ousted from there after I said something slightly negative about one of their speakers and reviews, and they're like, "That guy's a jerk." I'm like, "Okay, I'm done with that." I just don't engage with that sort of stuff. I just let people say whatever they're going to say and not worry about it. Gene has always had a hard time with that, and that's, I can understand it because
Well, I mean,
certainly want to say stuff too. And especially since the ABS guys were really they love to hate Audioholics. And they've been doing that since Audioholics has been around.
but they hate anybody who says anything different than whatever the pervasive opinion at the moment is.
That's exactly right too. And they're all about the Dolby Atmos, and Gene, isn't. And just like me, I was pretty excited about DTS:X with the idea of what they were going to do, and then we ended up with what we got, which is basically Dolby Atmos with probably a bass boost. And I'm like, no longer care. But I was really excited about it when I thought I could put my speakers anywhere. But now that I can't, I would very much like for all of this to go away.
No, it's the accusation of accepting payment or having a bias. Oh boy, do foreign people love that word bias, and they never use it correctly.
Somebody to offer me a payment for something.
Yeah,
Come on.
yeah. Those type of claimed or whatever. That's what's being responded to.
First of all, there's just not nearly enough money running around AV right now for anybody to be bribing anybody, as far as I can tell.
And reviewers don't have enough influence for it to even be worthwhile.
That's right. I mean, that's exactly true. There's nobody out there that's such a big name like the guy with the wine, Robert, whatever his name was, who, wines lived and died on whether or not he liked them. And, he was the Wine Spectator guy. I think it was the Wine Spectator guy. Anyways, there's just nobody like that out there. And if there were, I don't know who they are. Within the high-end community, there's some reviewers that certainly seem to have a lot of influence.
Sure.
But those guys are writing that, oh, chocolatey this and that. My system was perfect until I got this, and now it all sucks. But it's better now.
It's the type of speakers where if they sell one pair, they've made their money back for the year. So
yeah,
then it does matter, right?
But we're not dealing with that. So I can understand Gene being upset about it. So I didn't see really anything wrong with the video. I just wouldn't necessarily have done it myself.
Yeah, it wasn't even worth engaging.
That's exactly the way I feel about it. There was a guy, he hasn't done it in a while, but he used to come around like once a year. He'd come on AV. Once a year, he'd come onto AV Rant and post, "Yep, your podcast still sucks," and Tom's dirt. And I think at one point the HT guys recommended my book or whatever, and he posted over there under that.
Oh yeah.
Anything that this man would have anything to do with, I don't want to have any. I can't possibly. Sounds like something I'd be interested in, but because Tom wrote it, I'm not going to read it. I'm like, whatever, dude. Your life is really, really empty, and that's the way I kind of feel about it. I'm like, there's a small group of people that really take a lot of pleasure in doing these things, and just like bullies on the school ground, if you engage with them and you get upset that they've done this thing, you're just validating their power. You're giving them power, and I don't have time to give people power over me.
And you know what? It is a small group. The problem with the forum is that one person can post many, many posts, and it looks as though it's being said, but it's all being said by one person. Or two people who are just posting over and over and over.
Yeah, in different places all over the place, and they have different forum names sometimes. Like I always use the same forum names from forum to forum. So if you know what my forum name is, you can find me. It's not that hard. I'm not hiding, But yeah, I use my real name on the podcast. The real name of my wife and kids too. So that's that's a choice I've made, not to hide behind a moniker.
Don't feed the trolls. There you go. That's what I think of it. Don't feed the trolls.
That's pretty much it. That's pretty much it. All right, now we've got some questions from Eliezer, which are forever long. Jordan, John, Nikhil, Nicholas, Alan, Barney, Kevin. Geez, this many. Can I stop the podcast now? I really want to stop the podcast now. It's an hour and a half. That's long enough. I think
we better put a dent in this. This is far too many to leave for a whole week.
Oh, you say that, and yet we can still do it if we really wanted to. Because this Eliezer stuff is just forever.
Well, not really, because it's mostly recommendations from him. So
yeah, okay. Well, let's have the Eliezer's corner for right now, and then maybe I'll stop the podcast after that. Started his email by saying he was a bit behind the AV episode, so he listens to a marathon 8-hour plus session of 4 episodes in a row. He had several we're like the Hobbit of podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
Disgusting. Several comments and questions he wanted to share, so here they are in his own words. All right. Rob mentioned the etymonic earplugs for protecting your hearing if you go to a concert or the new Mad Max movie, I suppose. He wanted to add the list to the ones he has, which are the V Motivators. I have those as well. They're very, very good. I highly recommend them.
Yeah, there's one little difference there, which is worth noting. The V Motivators don't cut the sound as much. They cut it by, they claim 12 decibels, but linearly across the frequency range, so you're not, losing the ability to understand what people are saying. The Etymotics cut it by 20, so there's a difference there, and you might want to have both, for different situations.
Yep. 2 fancy boom boxes. He has a Peachtree Audio Deep Blue 2, and he loves it. And even though he doesn't expect to have the highs of an electrostatic, he's so well-rounded and has a lot of bass for that small size. It's also very flexible in terms of connectivity. So,
and I think that's what, a $300 unit.
Yep.
Something like that. $400 unit.
Oh, $400. So it's even more than the Truvo
one
I reviewed. Which, by the way, I forgot to mention in my review. It has this stupid thing where it takes it like 3 or 5 seconds to turn on. Like you have to hold the button down to turn it on. Now I understand doing that to have to turn it off, but I should be able to just tap that thing and it goes on. That's the only thing that really irritates me about that thing.
I also found out that Axiom Aris wireless speaker that I mentioned a while back, it's going to cost $800.
Jesus.
So
the one with its own Raspberry
Wi-Fi
Pi
network. Yeah, Raspberry Pi in it and its own Wi-Fi network and no Bluetooth. So, but it's $800.
Its own Wi-Fi. Why do you need Bluetooth if it sets up its own Wi-Fi?
There you go.
Bluetooth.
That was their thinking.
I also don't need a portable speaker that's cost $800. But then again, I'm also not crazy, because that's what it would take for somebody to put out $800 speaker and not be Meridian.
And the battery is still extra on top of that.
Of course it is. Speaker design and tweeters. When we were explaining the different types of tweeters, he remembered this article and video from a guy named Gene. You may know him, and this is, of course, Audioholics. There's a video, fabric versus metal dome tweeters, where you can talk about that. Also, when we mentioned the Kef Blade as a money as no object type of speaker, and he mentions is it Muon, which is
Muon, yeah.
Muon, the new one. The Blade first came out, that's what it was. The Muon, I always forget it's around because it's a stupidest looking speaker.
Yeah, well, the Blades are what, $30,000 or $40,000 a pair. Yeah. The Muons are $200,000 a pair, and they only made 100 of them.
Is that 50 pairs or 100 pairs?
No, 100 pairs.
Oh, okay.
And they sold them all. Because there are people out there with $200,000 to spend on a pair of speakers. Off you go.
I will never buy a pair of speakers. I think I can make this statement and it will be true. I will never buy a pair of speakers that have extra drivers on the back firing backwards. I don't think that's a design that I can get behind. I understand the concept of it. You have to I do understand the concept of it. I also understand that speaker is going to be firing into an absorptive panel, because that's where mine are. And anybody who has to have drivers in the back firing back are having that because they're in a room with they don't care about the room that does its stuff, and the speaker does its stuff, and there's not going to be any fixing the room to make it sound better crap. They just want backwards firing speakers to fix things, and that's just not me. All right, SACD and DVD audio on the budget. There was a listener looking for a player that could play both those audio formats, but didn't have the money to buy an Oppo. He suggests a Yamaha BD S477. It's $130 with accessories for less. Good find.
Yeah, I read through the manual of this thing. There is no mention of SACD or DVD audio whatsoever in the manual, which is a little off-putting. But there are several. Yeah, well, there are several websites that mention it, but there's only one little mention at the very bottom of the features page on Yamaha's own website, where I was like, that might have been a cut and paste mistake. So I have no experience with this. I am absolutely not saying this is incorrect, but I'm a little trepidatious because usually the manual will mention it if it's supported.
If it's not in the manual, it might be a copy pasta.
I wonder a little bit. Hopefully this is firsthand experience that Eliezer has with it.
477. Has anybody got one? If you do, let us know. If
yeah.
Your BD.
Yeah.
All right. So that's it for him. That was a short corner. I really want this on the podcast. All right, Jordan. one more to say. Jordan asked if he should keep his Vizio SB200 soundbar for his bedroom, or if it'd be worth it to upgrade to a better soundbar. If so, which one? Or get a slimline Marantz AV receiver and the Monoprice 5.1 speaker package. Is it an option to get speakers? Because if it's an option to get speakers, then that's the better one. Do that. Let's do that. Let's not do the bar crap. Let's do actual speakers, because guess what you'll have? Actual surround sound, not whatever it is that these other things are trying to give you.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, Vizio does have their actual 5.1 soundbars where they have a wireless sub and then two speakers that plug into the wireless sub, so they're kind of wireless, and that they don't have to at least have wires going to the front of your room. And I am very impressed with those. You know, they do sound darn good for the money, because Vizio does not charge you an arm and a leg for this stuff. They have a 42-inch version and a 54-inch version. The 54-inch version has an HDMI input, and there's a brand new model that has a C at the end of it, like all of their stuff this year, of the 42-inch model that also has an HDMI input on it, finally. So the thing is, if it's convenience, and especially for something like a bedroom where you're like, maybe I don't even want an AV receiver and to deal with all of that, like I certainly wouldn't mind that. Like the current soundbar that he has is 2-channel only. So if you want to go to, surround sound with a subwoofer, I certainly wouldn't just jump right past those Vizio 5.1 soundbars because, yeah, I think they're good. I actually think they sound just as good as those monoprice speakers, if I'm being honest. So,
no. If you're going to go with 5.1 speakers, then I would say yes, let's do that. But let's necessarily go with monoprice ones. Can we negotiate the speakers that you're going with? The convenience thing I can get behind, and I've always said about bedroom setups. Bedroom setup it's just about being able to hear. And it's not about. I mean, I don't want to have to sit in a specific position. I mean, I don't. I think, to be honest with you, I don't really personally want surround sound in my bedroom. I want to have a nice, clear set of stereo speakers up front. Have if it's sitting on top of my dresser or whatever, I want on each side of the dresser a nice little bookshelf speaker. I don't want. I mean, a surround bar or a sound bar, whatever, fine. But I want to be able to not really worry about that. And if it's just sort of a mono sound that's coming towards me because I'm sitting so far back or I'm sitting off to the side or whatever, that's not going to bother me. I just want to be able to hear the dialogue with my eyes closed as I'm trying to play during this thing.
Yeah, because I'm just thinking of the whole thing of, running wires, because every single one of those speakers, including the subwoofer, if you went with the Rant slimline receiver and the monoprice speaker package, every single one of those has to have a wire run to it. I'm just like, just that alone, because since the sound quality to me is not going to be drastically better than what the 5.1 Vizio soundbar can give you, that's why I'm kind of like, so convenient, so easy. Yeah.
Yeah, and I can get behind that too. So anyways, if that's what you're going for, I can get behind that. Let's look here. One more. John, I want to know how subwoofers that offer adjustable Q, such as some models from HSU, ought to be set. What would be the closest to a mixing studio sound? Now, subwoofers that offer adjustable Q, that Q goes along with an internal parametric EQ, usually, unless there's something else that some other Q that he's talking about that I'm not familiar with. And you adjust the frequency that you're going to adjust in the Q. It changes like how wide from that frequency it adjusts. So let's say if you pick like 50 hertz, okay, like 50 hertz, and you're gonna boost, or no, you're gonna cut by 5 dB, and you adjust the Q so it's either just 50 hertz or 50 and then plus or minus 3 hertz, so 53 to 47, or maybe plus or minus 5, it's 55 to 45 and out, and it's a slope, so you're basically, if you think about it, well, I've got this hump in my frequency response, I want to cut it down. How big's the hump? How wide's the hump? That's how wide I want this Q to be. And then how high is the hump? That's how much I want to cut based on that frequency. And the center frequency is the one that you go on. So what is the optimal setting? Whatever your problem frequency is that you're trying to I can't tell you that. What's your problem frequency?
Yeah, there is actually a different, like specifically with the HSU ones, because they have their whole variable tuning thing, which includes you can block one port, you can block both ports. It has EQ1 and EQ2 that go along with whether you've blocked one or two ports or left both ports open. And then they do have this separate Q adjustment, which is, it's more or less a damper. That's kind of what's happening there. It's more or less a damper on the driver itself. So if you set it to its lowest Q setting, it actually makes it so that the driver doesn't play as low. it actually narrows the bandwidth over which the driver plays. And the whole idea is you get louder output, but over a smaller set of frequencies. Whereas if you set it to the highest Q setting, then you get the widest range of frequencies that the subwoofer plays, but it plays them all at a lower volume level. So there's the trade-off. And it's to do with your room size, because if you have a smaller room where you're going to get a lot of room gain, then you might as well limit the frequencies so that you, I don't know, get the most headroom or something like that. It's a bit of an odd adjustment to have, if I'm being honest.
That's a stupid knob. They shouldn't have that. I disagree with that.
It's pretty much the knob that says if you don't like the way it sounds, there are so many options, you can never claim it was our fault. That's
most cues are not that. Whatever that is, that's most cues are not that. So most cues are what I said. It's all right. Now for the rest of you guys, Nikhil, Nicholas, Alan, Barney, Ashley, And we've gotten some questions from Sean and maybe Charles and Jonathan
Reading your
sent in
inbox.
something. Yeah, I'm reading my inbox. Simran also, or was that Sim? Did we already? Oh yeah,
Might have been follow up.
that was Sim. That was the one we already answered. So yeah, that's it. We had some technical issues. So if
We
you're
sure did.
hearing this, I just got a text from somebody that said that the YouTube isn't working. That's because I crashed or got kicked off
Ah,
or something. So sorry, whatever. Catch us next time. But we do record at Tuesday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern time, whatever, if it's daylight or not, depending on what time of the year it is. So if you want to check us out on YouTube, you can do that, or you get Tom Andry, that's my channel, or Google Plus plus Tom Andry, whatever it is. You can check us out there. Friend me on G Plus, and you'll be notified when I put you into uh, my listener circle. Your
mm-hmm.
listener circle will be notified that this podcast is about to start, and afterwards we have a hangout for anybody who wants to hang out with us afterwards to talk about AV stuff and sometimes motorcycles whenever I can. By the way, Don, who said that he used to race motorcycles, I was the biggest reason I was bummed for missing that podcast was I wasn't able to personally say
I
that I
know.
thought that was totally cool, and I would if you had that. Sorry, Paul. The only thing that would have been cooler than Paul putting the motorcycle sticker on there would be, I mean, put the race car sticker that's having a motorcycle. That would have been awesome. And for those of you that weren't following on Facebook, I did take the motorcycle. I'm sorry, motorcycle. I'm already stuck on that. The race car sticker that Paul sent me one. I said Rob sent me one. Paul gave it to Rob, and Rob
Yes.
sent it to me. I went to a place here in town called Signorama. They are a national, maybe even international chain, all franchisees. And the franchise guy, I called him up and he said, I explained my situation. It was an 18-inch by 4-inch sticker. I'm like, dude, I don't want to stick it on my cards. First of all, it's huge. Second, I might change cars someday. I'm probably going to keep this longer than I'm going to
Right.
keep my kids. So certainly I'm going to keep this car. So I would like to put on a sticker. He goes, well, we have a minimum of $55. I'm like, ugh, $55. He goes, yeah, but with that you get two 12 by 14-inch ones. I'm like, well, that sounds reasonable for $55. Two. I'm like, but yours is so small. We'll just do it for free. Just bring it in whenever you want. I'm like, awesome. So I went down
Nice.
there and got it for free, and immediately stuck it on the car. And I told him I would mention them on the podcast. So there, I did it. And yes, please go get some stuff from them if you need. That guy was awesome. That guy was. He was in
Signorama.
St. Pete. So I don't know. Pinellas Park is where he was. So look him up if you're in this area and you need wraps for your car or signs stuff. Like,
Cool.
all right. Ask us a question, Rob at abrant.com, Tom at abrant.com, at First Reflect for Rob, at abrant_Tom for me, Facebook.com/abrant podcast, and of course it's www.abrantpodcast for all of the rest of the links. For AV Rant, I'm Tom Antry.
And I'm Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.
The after party, if there's anybody, because it does say there's 7 viewers, so I don't know why Ephraim's having a problem. If there's we will have the after party in just a little bit as soon as I can export my file and make sure that it doesn't get corrupted.
Tom, don't stop your recording. Let's do a 1 through 3 stop so I can figure out how long this thing is and put in the appropriate time for the part where I had to cut out.
Okay, 1, 2, 3. Wait, don't stop my what recording? My audio recording?
Yeah.
Oh, that's way stopped. You're screwed.
Oh, well, too late. All right.
Yeah. All right, bye.